Everyone to the Tools of the Trade live stream. I'm your host, Captain Cole, and I'm joined by my co-host Trip, better known as Crypto ISO on Crypto Twitter. We got an awesome episode for you guys today, with lots to talk about, lots to get into. But before I get started, would you please do me a favor, smash that like button, make us look good for the YouTube algo. Also want to take a quick second to thank our sponsor, Phemex, one of the only non-KYC derivatives exchanges left in crypto. Click the link in the description below to get up to $6,000 in sign-up bonus. Now, the last thing I'll say before we get started here on Tools of the Trade, we are not financial advisors, and this information is for educational purposes only. What up, what up? How are we doing, guys? Welcome, chat. Welcome, Trip. Welcome to the live stream. Just went right into it today. How are we doing, Trip?
Yeah, quick on the shutter button, right?
Exactly. How are we doing, man? How's the week been?
It's been good. I think the theme has been patience. So
Patience pays, right?
We'll see if it pays off. It's been interesting to watch people flip bias. I don't really like to stereotype, but you see it a lot, and it's like this type of move, as we've talked about, like you get a big move, and then you get chop, and then so
consolidation.
How do you determine if that's distribution or reaccumulation? Like, are we going for another leg, or are we starting to break down, right? And altcoins have been super volatile because anytime Bitcoin moves a couple $100, there's no liquidity in those things, so their charts look extremely erratic. And we've seen kind of ETH BTC bleeding, people trying to play an ETH move, like we've had some fake outs.
Yep.
So now we're going to see if, is this a typical move in crypto where Bitcoin leads, it did its thing, it made a fresh yearly high, ETH hasn't. We have interesting liquidity profiles. Where do alts play into this? We're going into a holiday weekend essentially for the US with everyone's going to be kind of doing the 4th of July thing, and it's on a Tuesday.
Yep.
And while there's not too much of a correlation to equities and risk right now, those continue to stay rather buoyant in the face of everyone saying they should go down. And crypto actually decorrelated and started to trade up against it. And if you we can look at some of the stuff, but it's obviously kind of underperformed a little bit. So is that a little bit of a slowdown before it goes again, or are we going to see both of them drop, right? And yep. I think this is an interesting show because we can talk about some of the economic factors coming in July prior to the July 26th FOMC, which we know that Jerome Powell has said that, expect rate hikes, but there's a slew of data coming that if it's favorable, the Fed kind of is in a position where it's like, okay, how do you keep defending the argument here of raising rates when the data is arguably getting better, but at albeit slower,
yep.
Progress has been made from all the hikes that you guys have done, and he's acknowledged that himself. So while other places are raising, it's like an extremely interesting dynamic globally right now, and how does crypto fit in, obviously, with the sub narratives going on in ETFs and whatnot. So yeah, let's just get right into it. I think there's a lot to talk about.
Let's throw on. I want to talk about Bitcoin first. I think that's always my go-to here, especially with Ichimoku. A lot happened since last week, right? Prices were like 24/7. Then they were around 28K when we talked, and we were looking for that 27K retest. Never came. Prices went up, made a new yearly high. And then so I'm gonna overlay right here Ichimoku. The interesting thing to me here is like, where did price kind of stop? Right here at 31K, which makes sense, right? It's a weekly order block. You had supply here, and now here we have the cloud confluence, right? So the interesting part about this move to me, it's very fractal-like, right? Like we saw the consolidation here, dip, run up, consolidation here, dip, run up. Are we going to see a similar, third leg higher? To maybe 32, 35K. That to me seems the most likely outcome. However, from a trading perspective, we can get into the details in a little bit. But I think for right now, I'm not interested in taking the long to 32, 35 unless I see some sort of SR flip, unless I see a sweep of this daily low that we put in on was this? Last Thursday. So just almost a week ago. This low right here, like 29.5, I think it was 29.539. That to me is like the level I want to see swept, reclaimed really quickly if we're going to continue, right? So to me, it's like we don't want to get below 29.5, 29.4, maybe a wick down to 29.2-ish, call it. That to me is the must hold level for bulls to kind of keep going up if we want to make new highs. And the interesting thing is when you throw on, ichimoku on a 3-day. So right here, where is it? Yeah. So right now, 3 days ago, we had our Kumo break, or 4 days ago, we had our technical Kumo breakout. We talked about this like in March, right? So a Kumo breakout, for those of you who don't know, is a technical setup with ichimoku where it's a trend breakout trade, right? So the first thing you have to look for is price above the cloud, right? So price, the cloud's right here. Price is above the cloud. Great. Okay. Next thing you have to see a bullish TK crossover, which is your blue line being on top of your yellow line. So we had that back in February here. That was the first prerequisite. Next, we need a bullish TK twist, or a bullish Kumo twist, sorry. So that's when the cloud flips from red to green. And that's essentially telling you that the forecast for the next 60 periods is a bullish one, so to say, that it's going to be trending higher. And then the last thing on our list is we have to check the Chiku span, which is basically price plotted back 30 periods. Is it above where price used to be, or is it below? Obviously, it's above. Price was around 28K 30 days ago, and now price is at 30K. So we have all the preconditions for a Kumo breakout trade. And now the way I would actually trade this is I'd look for entries along the Tenkin or the cloud. So interestingly enough, the Tenkin is around 28K and the cloud is around 29.2. So if I'm in this camp that we're bullish, we're going to go higher first before we go lower, I really don't want to see like this 29.3 flat top. To me is like an interesting perspective to kind of get long, and then you'd have a stop somewhere maybe below 28.8, 28.5, maybe below this opening candle, and you're targeting new highs. And then the highs that I'm looking at are 33.7 based on ichimoku and 37.4. So that's kind of the down and dirty Bitcoin analysis for right now, how I'm looking at things. I really do want, however, to talk about the weekly, monthly, and quarterly levels real quick, just because from a trading perspective, now that we had the 3 or 4 days of the week, we swept the Monday low, we swept the Monday high, we've still been chopping. So all this really has been, like Trip said, we had the move up and now we're consolidating. It's a lot of chop, it's a lot of up and down, and then obviously alts are sneezing at the slightest sign of Bitcoin falling down. So again, for me, just to recap, this 29.5 level gets swept, reclaimed, and then that's along to higher. Otherwise, if we lose this 29 level, the first interest for me is obviously the quarterly open, and when we just paired that with ichimoku, we saw how that lines up to the 28Ks. But when I like to zoom out on the higher time frame, just take a quick second, guys. So if we're in a potential bottom, right? We bottomed at 16K. The new cycle has potentially started. Okay, well, where do we kind of participate in this new cycle? So market structure is king. We've talked about that at length, right? In a bullish market structure, you have higher highs and higher lows. So this was our low. This was our high. Here's our higher low, higher high, higher low, right? So this is an unconfirmed higher low for right now, this 24/7 move. But it was a pretty good move off the range high off the high time frame. So now what I'm looking for is a higher high. Oh, I guess no, sorry, we did put a higher high in. So this is a confirmed higher low.
Marginally.
That's a good point. So that's why if we were to start breaking down, this higher low would not be safe, and that's why I kind of want to see that 29.5 level held before we go higher and make another higher high, right? Wherever that ends up being. So I say all this because I'm going to preface this with, okay, well, let's say you're not taking this trade at 29.5 to 32, 35, wherever it goes, and you miss the whole move, right? I think that's going to be the case for a lot of people. They're not going to feel bullish enough to long 30, 29.5, whatever the case is, and they miss the move. So the way I look at it is, okay, so let's say we get to 32, 35, wherever we are. Where do we make the higher low net from there, right? I think that's the key spot that I'm wondering, because whenever we make the higher high and then eventually make the higher low, wherever it is, that to me is the spot that I actually want to get long and kind of fill a swing long position for probably like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months at least. Because at that point, I'm thinking that's probably going to be somewhere in Q4 where I'm kind of expecting the bottom of the quote unquote cycle to begin. And then our bull trend to kind of start with the whole idea of up only. But yeah, that's kind of my Bitcoin long form analysis and kind of how I'm approaching the markets going into the rest of the quarter, rest of the summer, going into the rest of the year. How are we seeing things, Trip?
Well, I think it's interesting because the month end is coming in. I think it's also the quarter end, and so that can make for some interesting fireworks around price. But if we're just looking at, I mean, I can go through my Bitcoin chart if you want, or we can look at liquidity. I mean,
Say we do liquidity because we did like a high time frame overview, but we can do like a more drilled down, I guess, on the maybe 4 hour hourly. Take a look at BTC.
Okay, so if we're just looking at liquidity, can you guys see this?
Yep.
This is the current liquidity profile from a liquidations level standpoint for BTC, which is something that we've always looked at. And you can see, okay, the delta is pushing 4.3. It's not anything crazy at this point. What's this 29.9 area? I mean, we have a lot of longs here, right? That are coming in. So to your point, a swipe into that zone, maybe down here,
Yeah.
makes sense, right? To me. Can we also go up from here and take out some shorts in the near term? Yeah, I think so. What I like to look at more so is this heat map, to see on, let's say, a 12-hour look back for BTC of like where the real liquidity pockets are. And we've talked about how to use these things, but I'll just go over that again. So if we look at this,
Yep.
we can see that we just hit some liquidity here in kind of this like 30K zone, right?
Yep.
Where's the rest? 29.7, 29, to your point, right? And
Yep.
the way to use this, or the way I like to use this, is you can look at those liquidations levels we just looked at on the actual like liquidation levels tab. And then this is the heat map. You can start to see how those bubbles match up with that kind of 29.4, 25, 29.5 area you were discussing.
Yep.
And when you have these purple areas, it's somewhat of a gap. And then that would bring you down into basically 28.9.
Yeah. It's like the 29K is the final level to hold.
Yeah.
Because look what happens after that, right?
Right. And so the interesting thing about that level to me is if you take the swing low 25 and the high, I think this is going to give you almost around that 38.2.
38.2. Yep.
You've
It's
got-
exactly 28,882 is the 38.2 from the full move.
Right. So if you did that, you'd be hitting all this liquidity, and you want price to hold here, or else there's a gap down to the number that everyone wants of 27.
Yep.
My personal opinion is that these numbers that everyone wants, especially after like big consolidation or big moves and consolidations, is they take a lot longer than people expect. For like, let's call it like one of those big 61.8 retracements, or even a 50, which would give you some of those cloud levels that you discussed. Yep. I think it's the Kijun. Yep. So here we're looking at, okay, here's the downside liquidity. Now where's the top side, right? Is this the grab? Or if we came into here and did even some of this 29.6, well, now you're looking at 30.6, 30, like now you're looking at the draw to the top side. And that's kind of this number that everyone was anticipating. But as I've said a lot, like price will probably eventually get to the area that you want, but the path that it takes is very difficult to figure out.
Yeah, it's not linear whatsoever.
Yeah. So, but like right here, this is actually extremely bright, 30.6, right? Can this happen? And then this? Sure. Yeah. Can this happen? And then this? Yeah. I don't know the answer, but I do know is that we just took some liquidity, and there's 4 billion in shorts on BTC, and here's a hot spot to the top side. If we look at a 7-day, and we can run this, this is giving us a little more higher time frame look at things. So we'll zoom in here slightly, and we'll pan this over. Now we can really start to see how the larger pockets on a 7-day look back, look, well, here's your 29.6, bright yellow, right? So now this is starting to look attractive. Sometimes the 7-day takes a little while to hit. We literally just hit it on ETH, and we waited a fair amount of time. But you can see that we have some up here, and this matches kind of to that 12-hour. So as I look at price and I look at after an expansion, it starts to range. Eventually, both sides are going to get hit, which seems more likely. And then we kind of dive into charts and lower time frame analysis to see. If I look at my BTC chart, and I'm going to show that now, so you guys can see. Can you see it?
Yep.
Okay. So let's just, yeah. So basically, our range, if we want to just take the extremes, is 29.5 to 31.4.
4. Yep.
Right? We ran the Monday high. It was a little tricky up here to short, but if you did, nice job. Came down to the mid, kind of faked out here. And I was waiting for all day today while a lot of people were kind of longing this. Like, if you want the most simple approach of something, if you take the Monday high and you come to the mid and you're trading below it, I think a high probability trade before getting long is sweeping the Monday low. Okay. So we just took some of the 12-hour liquidity at 29.8. We've traded below the Monday low, which was what does that say? The previous
Weekly high or
previous
high?
month high.
Month high.
And now we're trading back above it. This trend line somewhat loses its significance.
Relevance.
Yeah, so I actually just might straight up delete that. So, like, can we mess around here, come up, re-grab the mid, and take that liquidity right here that we just saw on the 12-hour that was brighter? Yeah, we can. Can we also do, like, this move and then reclaim the Monday low and this? Yeah. So, like, these are the scenarios that I kind of play out in my mind. But, okay, as of now, holding above the Monday low, I'll take the approach that we're going to at least trade to the mid. If you lose the Monday low, then this is a more likely scenario. Yeah. So it's kind of like a bit of observing right now if you didn't kind of long this in anticipation of sweeping some of that liquidity. If I look at BTC as a kind of a larger structure, and this is an interesting chart, at least. I'm going to turn off those spaceman levels. I actually think that we just went through a series of washing out a lot of sellers, people, and we've had a really big market structure break. Can it be that we literally just like SFP'd this high? Sure. Is it in my best interest to think that right now? Not necessarily.
Not till you have a break in market structure. I think that's the key to get across, right? You can have an SFP, a rejection, but unless there's follow through, guys, like an SFP has zero relevance because you need to see a break in market structure to confirm that SFP.
Yeah, and let's clean up some of these fibs here, so you can see how I'm looking at this chart, because I do think we're actually in like a megaphone type structure.
Yep.
It's really clean on the top side. Here's the start of your bull trend, 16. Here's your touch, 19.6, which was basically like the weekly long of that move. And then we had this one last move up off of like where everyone thought this was the high. And then we distributed. So like, I don't know how this looks in relation. Like, do we get one more move up and then and that's it?
And then distribute from there.
Yeah. And guess where we would come down? I don't know. Maybe we come down to 28 or something like that, depending like, how this works.
Maybe you're quarterly open at that point, right?
Exactly. Maybe that's the other quarterly open. But like if this trades 34 or something crazy, people are going to be like I'll probably say we're going to, this top channel. But the reality is we might come down here, touch this, and then do this 40 for like basically what we can talk about in the first quarter of next year. So like
Yep.
I have a very high time frame look at the Bitcoin chart because I think it's following a very particular structure, and I haven't really seen this before. So the question is like where does this find support? I'm not sure, but I know we just took some liquidity, and I'm sure we're going to chop around more. I think
Yep.
the more interesting thing, and there's your kind of, I guess that well, we had to adjust this. So to your point, 28.9. I mean
Exactly.
that's a
So
key zone.
yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned that. I want to take a quick second to flip to my little 4-hour chart with Ichimoku. And the reason being is you guys know I love Ichimoku. It's my favorite for trending environments. And let's say we are starting a trend, right? We had a monster move, 5,000-6,000 BTC move. And now the fact that we're here, the way I like to get long if I'm trading with the trend is this yellow line keychain, right? So whether it's a 4-hour, 6-hour, it's kind of contextual depending on where you are in the trend. But either way, 4-hour, 6-hour, 12-hour, those are usually my highest hit rate levels. So the 12-hour on BTC is 28K, although we just had that move, so I don't expect us at all to come here. The more relevant one to me is for the 4-hour Kijun, which hasn't been tapped since we broke it, right? So since we broke it at 26K, we haven't had a retest yet. It's flattening out at 28.8, then moves up to 28.9, and then starts finally trending to 29s above. So, what is this, Friday? So maybe before the end of the week, before the weekend, we get that move down below that 29.5 level, sweep it, touch the cloud, touch the Kijun, and then that's your long to new highs. So that's kind of how, when you just kind of mentioned that approach, how I'm seeing things. But I wanted to also take a quick second to talk about the weekly chart someone asked. 1 second, let me find the question. Talk about the weekly Ichimoku setup. So it's not going to happen for a very long time, but it's worth mentioning just because we are going to see it at some point next year. So the weekly setup that my buddy Vinod's mentioning is the edge-to-edge setup. So this is one of my favorite basically trading styles apart from Ichimoku breakouts is the edge-to-edge, which is basically when you have a bullish cross right here. The blue line goes over the L line, so that just happened on this weekly open. Then once price actually ends up closing inside the cloud, wherever that may be, and then once this Chiku span is above price, which it likely will be by the time we close in this cloud, then you have a setup. And that setup says that when price enters one side of the bottom cloud, it will travel to the other side of the cloud. And the invalidation is obviously falling out of the cloud. So the interesting thing that Vinod's mentioning here is that some point in 2024, we're going to have an edge-to-edge setup to 42, 43K. And I think that's an interesting thing to keep in mind as we move forward. So, and I'm going to preface this, or I'm going to pivot from here and talk about the golden bull run timeline, which I'll discuss in a second. But point being is wherever we end up going and chopping around, you will eventually get a setup that will take you to here with a stop loss probably somewhere below 25, which is this confirmed higher low, right? So take a quick sec now, switch to this. Trip shared this with me a couple days ago, and I put it in Crypto Insiders about an hour ago to talk about. I want to talk about this just because from a timing perspective, you want to participate in the golden bull run of Bitcoin where it goes up only, everyone goes crazy, retail floods in, and all that good stuff. So you were trying to figure out now, when does this actually happen, right? Everyone talks about the golden bull run. Everyone wants to get long. Where do I actually go about doing this? So this little graphic here that's from Pear, I think Trip said, is basically a timeline for the ETFs that have been kind of pushed into the space, right? So is the iShares ETF, is that the Van Eck one that got adjusted, Trip?
Well,
There
I'm
was one
pretty sure
ETF that was before BlackRock, right?
Ooh, I don't
They
know.
just filed it.
I haven't really kept up with all the ETF stuff. I mean, it was like a flurry of news, and I'm sure there were existing ones. But when this came across my radar, I'll put the tweet wherever it came from just to give the person credit in our Telegram. But it was like, okay, here's a really logical way to think about how the market can react to things around certain timelines. Fidelity,
Exactly.
he said. BlackRock, Kathy ETF. Oh, the ARC one? What? Yeah, so there's
Yeah,
so many.
yeah.
Everyone just was like, you get an ETF, you get an ETF, you get an ETF. It was like a Oprah show.
So the interesting thing with that is that, with the ETFs is that, I think the narrative that why we bottomed, right, is the BlackRock ETF, and we're running with that. So now it's like, okay, that was the catalyst for the move, but the market priced in speculatively that's a bullish event, which it is. But when does the ETF actually get approved to the point where it starts trading and we start seeing these institutional flows actually occupying the order books, right? So this little graphic here basically says that February 23rd of February, end of February of next year is the final deadline that they can approve or deny. If you guys remember back in November of 21 when they were doing, or not even, just 2021, when the whole idea of the ETF being approved by Grayscale was the narrative. The SEC kept, or not denying, they kept extending it, right? The deadline by 90 days, 45 days, 60 days, whatever the case was. And that kept pushing the can down the road until we finally got the rejection, right? So in this situation here, end of February is when the final decision has to be made by the SEC to approve or deny. And unironically, that lines up very closely with the next Bitcoin halving, right? So when we zoom out or go back to that chart we just kind of talked about, talking about, timing for the golden bull run, right? So if February here, so around this area here, let me block that off. So February here and March-ish here. So between this little pocket here is when we are likely going to see a shift in trend, if it has not shifted already, going up. So at some point, price will close in this cloud, and between here and here, if not sooner, is when I want to get long to trade to here. That is kind of the approach I'm taking in regards to that ETF timeline, because we bottomed, we've broken out of high time frame range, we retested said high time frame range, we moved up, broke market structure, made a higher high. Bull run is going to happen. It's just a matter of when, and I think when is going to be end of quarter four, before that February final date, right? So I want to say like 2 or 3 months ahead of that. I feel like during one of the deadlines, we're going to get some more clarity on that, and that should probably translate into some bullish price action. But yeah, should we pivot now to ETH Trip? You want to take that for right now?
Yeah, I mean, it could be interesting to see how, we started the year super bullish, right? So it's like, do we get a similar thing next year? Does the fall start to move? Is the fall distributive into the end of the year? And then that is like, it's too hard to tell. I don't really like to try to predict that far ahead. But I think the overarching point of like why we're going over these higher time frame charts and looking ahead at possible market moving events is because like you can have a high time frame plan and you can wait and not have to trade any of this chop, or if you miss the move, and then you can have low time frame plans trading around liquidity and those types of things. So kind of depends what your appetite is. So yeah, we can look at good old ETH because I think ETH, I think I've been pretty vocal about it, but I think ETH is really in an interesting spot because, well, I guess let's just do like a top-down analysis of ETH, right?
Yep.
That's what we did, which I find it really interesting how they're both in very similar structures to me. Let's turn these off. And like you can make the argument for both of these being in these kind of megaphone structures. So again, we have our 1080. We're grinding up. This was our 1390, right?
Yep.
That's similar to your 19.6 weekly low.
Yep.
Ripped it. And well, it wasn't such a clean distribution like BTC. We eventually came down. We touched the bottom of the channel, which is the 200-day moving average. And also the 61.8 of this to this. Still kicking myself for not buying this because I thought BTC was going to go lower because ETH BTC was in such a weak position. That's besides the point. Learn from your mistakes, but this was insanely clean. And we did a similar move that Bitcoin did, right?
Yep.
In terms of like rocketing off the bottom, we didn't really take out these highs. And while Bitcoin came up to like hit the fresh highs
Yearly
up
high.
here,
Yep.
it didn't. ETH did not. And if history is similar to what it has done in the past, my thinking is that BTC could consolidate, and ETH has yet to do its final impulse to come up and really test, let's call it this supply zone, right? I don't know
Yep.
if you can argue this is a bull flag, but this is very clean to me. And if we look at where demand is, like this is a POB, okay? This is a point of breakdown. This is almost like an inverse head and shoulders. And we rocketed back through this zone that was basically where sellers were. We tested it here, we tested it here. To me, this is a quarterly open. They were liquidity pockets that we just identified a week ago and said we like 1810 to 1820. Zoran last stream said, look, identify your levels. If that's where you want to bid, take no emotion into the equation. Understand that price came into them, and like if that's where you think it's going to rebound, then just do it. So I am long from here right now, thinking that there is a big catch up trade on ETH, and this is potentially a bull flag, and we're going to see the move that BTC did on ETH. I don't know what it's going to do to drive it, but we can look at liquidity and why, but that we can also look at like ETH BTC. To me, everyone's so bearish on this. I mean, we've kind of identified 0.059 as like a level, like this is your deviation. You're coming back into here. Like, how close do you want to get it? Maybe get a swipe down here. But even just like a move back up to like this, right?
Yep.
Could be explosive enough for ETH to take a lot of the topside liquidity that is still resting there. And we can look at the actual like spaceman levels on this before we look at the liquidity itself. But here we are, quarterly open. I think that it's probably like, we want to see it get back above the Monday low. Do I think it can like kind of dance around here a bit? Yeah. I think if you're like decidingly trading below 1800, then you're probably going to come into like this zone, and that would be on the heels of like BTC going to much lower levels that we talked about.
Exactly.
And so if you look at the liquidity for ETH, and let's just look at the liquidation levels first, because this helps identify stuff. Because we can look at the delta, which I think you can start to develop directional bias around the delta. So here we are with 4 billion. Oh, no, sorry. We got to get to the ETH ones. Here we go. Let's see. Gold Hyblock. Loading them up. All right. So 3.8 billion in shorts on ETH. Relative to notional amounts in the
This is pretty tame.
Yeah, it is. But I think you probably have less market participation in the chop zone versus the impulses up, which we saw like trying to trade a delta around 25% move straight up. Was like people were like, there's 20 billion, then 30 billion. After like 14 billion in longs on BTC, I was like, this is where you need to understand that this strategy does not work. The market was spot driven, and it was on a mission for liquidity. So now we're back in range bound territory, chop, when this stuff maybe is going to become more relevant again. And so we have 80 longs to 293 shorts with 4 billion, almost 4 billion. And we hit this key lick at 1825 and took a little lower to where we were kind of waiting. Can it come down here to 1788, which was like kind of that like zone I was talking about on that diagonal? Sure. If we go look at the heat map now, this is really the most interesting thing to me. ETH liquidity has been a lot cleaner for me to analyze. So if we go to the 12-hour on ETH, and we'll run that, and then we're going to look at the 7-day. You can see here, zoom in a little bit, and pan. You can see here we just tapped it, right? This is your lower bound that I was kind of talking about, but you don't have a ton of fuel right here like you did with BTC. It's not as bright, but
Yep.
this is bright up here, 1884. I mean, you start hitting it at 1846. Can it come up and go to almost 1900 again? Sure. Could it go all the way to 1930 and run into like 1940 and take out basically all the highs that are sitting there? Yeah. Is it likely? I don't know yet. I think you need to see things be reclaimed and some initiation by the buyers. This
Got to
is
take it level to level.
yeah.
Hey, look at that yellow. Holy shit.
This is the most interesting thing to me is you just ran a massive 7-day liquidity cluster. Like this is why I said 1810 to 1820. 1805, like maybe you dip in here a little bit, but like 1920, 1955, these numbers up here, like what I actually think could happen, I don't know what's going to happen over the weekend or when, is you're going to start to see ETH BTC show some life potentially, and you'd get the explosive move into topside liquidity that ETH has kind of been waiting to do. That's like my trade plan. That's how I'm looking at the market. I don't know if it's going to be right, but like I have enough evidence to where like I want to believe in that idea and take that trade. So that's like a full analysis of BTC and ETH liquidity and the megaphone structure and high time frame and low time frame like liquidity pockets.
Love it. I'm going to take a quick sec, talk about my ETH chart. I see things pretty similar, but there are a few nuances here. So this is actually my chart from last stream. I actually haven't touched it. The trade was 1818 key June, stop below 1700, targeting new highs. This trade to me is still a valid trade, but now the fact that we're where we are right now, I can see a situation where before the end of the week, Bitcoin does sweep that 29.5 level, and ETH, as a result, will make one more low below here. But to your point, Trip, I do think that we do need to hold some certain levels, but I'll get to ETH BTC in a second. I actually see a situation where we go all the way back to like 1770s. And the reason being is just because from this perspective, right now, price is inside the cloud. It's been in the cloud since last month, almost 6 weeks. And the fact that we went, to the top of the cloud, bottom of the cloud, top of the cloud, bottom of the cloud, we got rejected over here in the cloud, couldn't break out. I wouldn't be surprised by a move to the Tenkin 1770s, maybe even the bottom of the cloud 1760. But for me, 1700 is like the level to hold if we want to see any sort of continuation to new highs. Now, the interesting thing with ETH BTC in my mind, and we talked about this last stream, but just to do a little weekly look again. So we talked about this little zone here. Right here, where is it? So range low and this little DBS. Oh, there it is. Okay. Yeah. So coming back down into here, this is still the level that I'm looking at. And the reason being is there's this order block here. ETHBTC is nuking. I'm not as convinced that ETHBTC will show strength until maybe the weekend, like you're saying, Trip. Like that could be the situation. But I still think we have 2 or 3 down days left in us before we come into this key level for me. So if we kind of extrapolate, right? So if like ETHBTC is going to potentially nuke, let's just say 4 or 5%, and BTC itself is potentially going to go down from 31 to 29.5. So call that 2%. So let's just say it could potentially be a 6% move on ETH, 6% down from here. It'd be pretty brutal in the 1700s. Not saying it's going to happen like that, but like I'm just trying to figure out from a trading perspective how I want to create my setup where I can create an attractive setup with good risk reward while not keeping my stop too tight since I am playing for new highs, right? I want this higher low to hold, but I also don't want to draw my stop below this higher low because I'm giving up potential P&L. That's kind of how I'm looking at it from the ETH side. Let's pivot now and talk about some alts. What do we got in the chat? Feel free to drop any tickers. Bitcoin Cash was the first one I think I saw. You want to pull up Liquidity, Trip? I'll take a peek at BCH.
Yeah, and we can look at Sol actually because this is one I actually longed on this bottom channel. Because I think it's an interesting structure right now. Can you guys see this?
Mm-hmm.
Because the liquidity profile is pushing like a pretty significant amount of shorts, and you had a lot of people long like this, and then the reclaim, and they put their stop here, and now so the market just stopped out everyone on this trade basically, and you came back into like this SR flip, right?
Yep.
This is a DBS zone, like this is the impulse. Yes, I mean you can test this stuff. So similar to like ETH in that like channel right here is 1, 2, 3, 4. There's a lot of highs right here, right? You traded below Monday's low and you're trading back above it. If ETH and BTC start to show life, this thing, in my opinion, is actually going to potentially do what everyone wanted it to do to come into this zone, right? And this is like kind of a typical weekend move I could see. Not necessarily sure this would happen during the week, but like this is like an interesting area of resistance and supply that's been untapped to fill kind of a void
Void.
here, right? So where do you get in? I mean, I think holding above Monday's low is interesting. I think if you, I mean, the daily open's going to change obviously, but if you're breaking above this, like, and you can just take the rule of fives, like, I was kind of surprised it didn't break here, but we saw the reaction of like how BTC can move and just destroy everything in the alt market. It's interesting, and we can look at the liquidity for Sol. And why I find it attractive in terms of like when you start to build consistent red deltas around things, they it can only last for so long.
So long.
Figuring out when that's going to reverse, again, I don't know. Take your best guess and come up with your best trading plan. But Sol was pushing, I think, over 2 million in shorts. Um, Everyone got super bearish on it because of Robinhood, and this to me is consistently red. Now you need to basically break above this to make kind of a higher high. Let's
Yep.
call it low time frame, but 223 million in shorts with a ratio of 248 to 36. Like, people didn't get it here. Is this going to be it? I mean, the nice thing about this is that like 1580 is your nearest long, meaning like, yes, there are longs in here, but no one really chased it up here. So this topside liquidity is closer to price for me. So again, if you take the bias that BTC could go back to 30.6 and then ETH's going to show some life to 1880, then Sol is probably going to do some damage on shorts, and like draw your diagonal here, it could get pretty explosive. Again, this is kind of like, I feel like this is your typical like weekend move
Yep.
on an
The alt
altcoin.
pump.
Yeah, and that's one of them that I've kind of waited on because it's been attractive. So we'll see. But what did someone look at? BCH.
BCH. Yeah.
Do we have liquidity for that? This
Oh,
I okay. I have not participated in this. I mean, I know the
I
EDX.
think few people did, to be honest. This was just one of those. It just pulls like an XRP move. Everyone's sidelined, and they FOMO in.
Yeah, I know that the exchange that like Citadel backed EDX, they named
Yep.
4 alts or 4 coins: Bitcoin, ETH, Litecoin, and
BCH.
BCH, and now there are 744 million longs on it. I don't know.
Yeah.
This is
I
a big
mean,
one,
yeah,
241.
just looking at that, you don't necessarily long that, but I would be careful shorting strength.
Yeah,
Because you
it's
could
interesting.
easily
Like,
keep putting more highs in before you actually end up topping, right? So I
here's
don't
your
think this is.
high,
Yep.
higher low, high, higher low, high. But now you're kind of getting like weaker higher highs. You see?
Marginal highs, yeah.
Yeah, and you're getting like, so calling a top on this type of stuff, I don't really know, but like you're getting up here, but it's also like I haven't seen it. This is spot driven. Like, what's driving this? Like, again, like, can this exceed the 744 by a lot? I mean, yeah. Look, we could have said at 650, and here we are. But I will say this maybe is running out of steam. I haven't looked at a chart. Also, I don't know what the high time frame looks like or anything. But maybe do you have that up?
Yeah, I'll share it in a sec. So interesting you mentioned that. Like this is Bitcoin Cash. So it basically 2x in a period of like a week. And the interesting thing here is like when I just zoom out here. So my first area of interest is always mean reversion. I wouldn't necessarily buy here, but I definitely wouldn't sell here just because this is showing superior strength. I'm not going to fade that strength. However, when I zoom out, this looks kind of very similar to kind of Bitcoin before it broke out from the 16K bottom. So it kind of broke out from an accumulation range. I'd want to see an SR flip of like this high time frame range and basically bid that. So, this, let's just call it from here to here was our little range, broke out of it with strength. I would like to see some sort of SR flip put in. Maybe it's 160s, 180s, 190s. But, just looking at this chart, BCH actually looks like a good beta play to BTC right now, just because, like you mentioned, Trip, like they added it to EDX or whatever. There is potentially going to be institutional flows going into BCH and LTC based on EDX.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see what you think about LTC because that has the whole halving narrative and
Yeah, so that was actually what I wanted to get to next. So LTC is super interesting, right? The halving is in like 30 days, a month, something like that.
I actually think this doesn't look too bad.
No, this to me is like, I mean, if I'm just going to be a classical
Like
TH
if you look at that weekly like that really nice buy candle 2 weeks ago,
2 weeks ago.
76 bottom.
Oh, this wick.
Yeah. I mean that's like
So the interesting thing here is you also have the TK cross right here. It already happened. So once you end up closing in the cloud, even if it's in like the hundreds, you have a setup that goes to 160 and 220 potentially. So interesting to keep in mind. I don't know what the liquidity looks like there, but just from a high time frame view, and we're going to talk about these alts from a more high time frame perspective, just because we're trying to catch potential longer term moves, or at least that's what I'm looking to do. But yeah, LTC to me is just like one of those that it's a major coin that has a narrative happening. It's very likely that this will, print a 200 handle over the coming next 6-7 months, whatever the case is.
yeah, we can look at
what else we
near
got
term.
here?
Holy cow, it's got a lot of shorts.
Oh wow, 183 to 32.
Guys, I'm seriously telling you that people are pretty short some of these alts. Like you might have an alt weekend, like where everyone's like so bearish on alts that they die, and let's just say BTC chops even or ETH goes up or it chops. Like some of these things are just set up to rip topside, like from just like strictly a delta standpoint. I think LTC has like a really interesting chart, and the liquidity profile on it is now even more
very favorable for longs.
Yeah. So I would keep that one in mind.
Yeah.
Were there other ones? Someone.
Uniswap, Kiko
Wow.
Albuquerque. Haven't heard that name in a while. Not Kiko, but the Uniswap. I think I never heard Kiko.
Does Uni have liquidity?
Yeah, it should. Interesting daily chart. Down 8.5% on the day.
Holy cow.
Wow. Interesting.
A lot of these are like pretty crazy ratios.
And notice where most liquidity is. It's like higher up too.
So didn't these guys have some news come out or something? Uniswap version like 40,000. There's like a new version coming out. I don't know. But here you basically had, maybe everyone was, well, here's probably the news, right?
Yep.
Guess what? Look where he just came back to.
Point of origin.
So again, dip down here? I haven't looked at the chart, or is this going to,
So
I don't
the
know.
chart
There's a
to
lot of
me,
green in here though too.
no,
So
there is. So those bottom licks, I think, what do they go, like 4.6 ish? Yeah.
yeah,
So interestingly enough, that lines up with like the daily key June. So you had the move, the impulse move, return to the point of origin. I think you sweep these stops here at like 4.6, 4.67, right down to the Tenkan key June, so 4.65 to 4.5.
like an
Um,
SR flip and a giant
it's
POB.
exactly. So I'd like to see basically like these equal lows swept, and then you come down into here, and then that's your move up. Sweep 4.67, reclaim. That's where I want to get long, and I'm probably targeting a sweep of these highs there.
Yeah, or even if you just played a mean reversion fib back up to the 61.8 off the low from the high, like you might not sweep all the highs. You know what I'm
Oh
saying?
yeah, I get what you mean. Like a retest down here, wherever it ends up
Yeah,
potting.
basically like supply zone. Yeah,
Yeah,
still
makes sense.
good trade.
4.6 to 5.2. Yeah, I like that. That makes sense. You just looked at liquidity. What else we got?
Mask, yeah.
Mask.
So this one is, guys. I've tried to long. I did not long mask. I was just letting you know about it because I've been burned by the thing so many times. And then when it moves like super fast, and you have no idea why, and it cleans out a lot of shorts. But let's see here. Yeah, okay. So maybe now I'm calling it now. You're gonna get a squeeze on mask, guys. I don't know where it's gonna come from. Zoran can look at the chart, but like, look, I mean, you got. Uh,
Yeah, this is an interesting one. Let me pull up the
I know
chart.
Nick was trying to, or Nick
Yeah,
bought this. He's done well on it, but I think it burned him this time.
this time it burned
Again,
them.
draw your diagonal across here. If you start breaking up, you will be going
Yeah.
for all of this stuff. But it's a guessing game because you could have tried it here, here, here.
So
You
the one
could,
thing I do like that like this candle does seem like a bottomy candle. But the only issue I have is like I still don't have the confidence that BTC is going to hold here. So this wick low seems to me like we're going to fill this up first. Where was the bottom lick on mask trip?
oh god, the maskers. I mean, here would be 314.
What's like the 25x on the way body? 3.07. Yeah. So no, yeah, I actually like that a lot because that would sweep this low and run that last lick. So if you got to move from here down to like 3.7, I think you said, right? 3.07.
Yeah.
So just like right like that. So I'd almost be interested to see the reaction if price comes back down here, hits that bottom lick at below 3.09. If we get a swift reaction up, I'd probably just insta long the reclaim of 3.9 with a stop of wherever that wick goes to, and then playing for that diagonal break wherever it ends up going as well. Yeah, that's actually an interesting setup, mask.
What did someone else wanted to look at?
What else we got?
I'd like to look at Pepe because
Yes, I've been wanting to look at Pepe as well.
curious what this thing is holding. All right. Okay, so 300 million in shorts, 83 to 19. I haven't traded this. I mean, this was a consolidation after it moved a lot.
It did.
I think so. Are we 0.1? I don't know. The interesting thing about this is this low, this low, this low, this low were all just taken, and now we're trading back up. So I guess like if you reclaim this, right,
What level is that?
you would go to the highs up here.
Yeah. So interestingly enough, that lines up with the Monday low at 147. That's actually what I was looking at too.
So yeah, so price just stopped out every single person, and you can see it right here. Do you come back down here, swipe this? I'm not sure. The most conservative play is what Zoran just said: is mark out the
Wait
level.
for Yep.
You reclaim this. This is a big wick. I don't know where you necessarily want to put your stop. Maybe it's below
So
here.
if you reclaim the Monday low, you'd get in. I'd probably put my stop below that low because that would be like the deviation below if you get that.
Yeah.
However, if BTC is going to go lower, right? Monthly open is an interesting level just because, above monthly open, bullish, below bearish. This monthly open seems to be a good SR flip potential. And that is
what number in
127. So it's like another
literally
50% move down.
it's literally the bottom lick on the chart.
Oh wow. Okay. So yeah, I like that. Bid monthly open on Pepe. If BTC sweeps 29.5 or whatever the this then that logic is.
Or you reclaim this Monday low. So there's your double trade plan for Pepe potentially.
Yep. I like that. What else we got here?
All right.
A couple more. STX.
So we don't have that. I've seen a lot of people talk about it, but I'd just say that when everyone starts talking about a certain trade, I
It's
don't
probably
know.
crowded. Yeah.
I get nervous.
Interestingly enough, it is bouncing off the Kijun here. So if this low doesn't hold, I think we go to monthly open. I don't know since we don't have liquidity on it. It did get rejected by the cloud here, right? It came into it, kept rejecting out, trying to SR flip this. So it either holds this low or it goes to monthly open. I think the monthly open is more preferable for me. This is an extremely volatile coin too. So right, that's like another 10-12% move down. So some of these, if you have a bias that BTC is going to sweep 29.5 and you've noticed that alts have been kind of shitting the bed whenever BTC dips $100 or whatever the case is, it probably behoove you to look at some of these setups that are above the monthly open and wait to bid until they get near the monthly open for SR flips. So yeah, Stacks is interesting. I don't know that it's necessarily one that I want to buy here, but if I was a scalper, I'd use today's current low as the low and try to target probably a run of today's current high.
All right, pull up the Lido chart. This one's interesting. It just took out all these lows at 180.
Lido chart. Ooh, I haven't heard that one in a minute.
196 to 38. I have a Lido. I have a whole Lido thing.
Yeah, you give us your Lido. That's your baby there. Link. Yeah, I'm going to get to Link, Dylan. I'm going to talk about that last. It's actually what I want to talk about.
Which one?
Link.
All right. Can they see the Lido liquidity?
Yeah, they're looking at liquidity right now.
Okay, so this is the interesting part. 180 just was swept. And now we're trading back to where? Where's price? 184?
Yep.
So back again, we're back to the origin of a 180 to $2 move. So now we've washed out all the people. We're pushing again, relative to notional amounts, 33 million. But again, the liquidity in these altcoins is so low that like if you were to really start to squeeze, like it could take out some people. You could probably draw a diagonal here, but we'll just go to the actual like chart, my Lido chart, which oh god, man, that like exhaustion up there missed my asks by like very, very little. It was the quarterly open.
Yep.
So if we look at, let's clean this up. I don't like this particularly on the daily, but that's besides the point. We'll take this fib out. Let's clean this up. So we're below the Monday low right now. We took out the Monday high and then boom, right? The previous weekly low is $1.68.
Yeah.
So again, like back to Zorn's point about like, what's your bias on kind of BTC and ETH?
Yep.
Then like the draw on price going down here, if you're negative on it, well then like that makes sense. If we look at Lido as a lower time frame setup, and we take these lows, this is what I was talking about.
Yep.
You literally just swept them, and now you're trading above it.
Yeah.
So if you think it's going up, and there's potential for, you know, all these highs to get taken out, or wherever the liquidity was. I mean, I think you need to start trading above here to get a higher high, but like you have a trade set up here because if you think that this was the sweep and a reclaim,
The
then
top goes below the sweep, and then
yep,
you're targeting the highs, or maybe even monthly open or the mid or whatever.
yeah. And again, this is like, okay, what is your bias on BTC and ETH, right? So like, we're just doing theoretical things to kind of help you guys look at how we look at price. But like, let's say you were just like, even if it was the previous weekly high, I mean, this is a pretty powerful trade setup. Like sitting through it may be difficult, but like if your biases were going way up, can 11% happen on Lido in a weekend?
Oh, absolutely.
It can happen
In the
in like
candle. It can happen in
4
the
hours.
candle.
And so this is interesting to me given the delta, the sweep here, and my particular bias on direction for BTC and ETH. So like maybe this is a trade setup I will take. I'm not sure yet. I kind of want to see how things close, but like are there anything like from a lower time frame, like that's pretty clean,
It is
honestly.
clean.
Like that is like,
It's worth a punt, right? I don't know,
yeah,
you get the full target, but it's worth
yeah.
a punt.
You can at
Good
least play
trade.
back to the Monday high. That's still like a 3.4,
Yeah.
right? Like here's why it's interesting is like this whole zone, fine. This is demand. You retested it, you reclaimed it. For this to break, and I think you need to come back down here. Maybe like you could do this. If you come back down here, then you're most likely going to come down to
The
previous
previous
weekly
weekly.
low
Yeah.
because this is going to become weak. But I just think that this is actually pretty interesting on the Lido front. And if you start trading above here, well then your trade is looking pretty nice. Trade above this, then you've made
Reclaim the Monday low. You go back
higher
to the
high
high.
on this time frame right here.
I like that.
I don't know if there's any like TD setups for Confluence in terms of like
Hourly 9. No.
yeah, or 4 hour. Like, what's the 4 hour chart look like? It's an 8.
7.
So the
8.
next one's going to be a 9. So you can maybe mess around here, and it
Chop a little bit and then wait
yeah,
for the setup to confirm on like
maybe you
8
get
hours from now.
here. Yeah, this is something that I would keep an eye on. I don't know if these moves are going to happen immediately, but like look at this, right? Oh, here, con. Maybe you get like another one, and then I don't know. I would I would look at that. It's a very interesting trade setup, I think.
I like that. All right.
Um,
Last thing I want to talk about before we wrap things up, guys, is Link. Someone asked about this, and this is just like this is such an interesting chart. I was looking at this. Link Marines have been down only since forever, right? But we've been in this accumulation range for like a year and a half now. We deviated below it. I'll delete this real quick. So this is our little accumulation range. We deviated below it, retested it, closed above it, reclaimed it, and now it looks like we're retesting it. And then the deviation itself, if we zoom out, was really just like the SR flip of all-time highs from 2019. So this chart to me is actually like the most interesting, potentially bullish chart I have for the coming, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 months, whatever the case is. Just because if and when this eventually breaks out, Link will be the strongest performer of the year, or one of the strongest performers of the year. I should probably very carefully say that. But point being is I really like this. I think if you are bullish on crypto cycles, general macro of crypto cycles, buying Link around the 550, 560 mark with invalidation below 4.8 is probably a pretty good risk reward setup. If you think we're going to start a new cycle, it's like a 20% potential drawdown, right? So let's say you buy 5.6, buy 5.6, and your stop's below 4.8. So it's like a 17 to 20% drawdown. But I preface this because, if we zoom out on the higher time frames, we're saying a new cycle is going to start. We're going to get our up only. This is the alt that will probably make new all-time highs, or one of the alts that will probably make new all-time highs next cycle. So from $5 to $50, that's a 10x. Let's see what happens, right? This is just one I want to mention because I think this is one of the spot plays that I am going to start to slowly accumulate the next quarter, because I do think this is actually going to full send next cycle. So
And
yeah,
then
guys,
once it breaks 965,
it's
you're like, all right, cool. I just
I'm
sit in it.
I'm up 2x and I just sit in it from there, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, I think that about wraps it up, guys. Talked about a lot of cool stuff today. Talked about different alts, BTC, ETH. Went over a lot of liquidity levels. Lido looks like a very interesting setup. If your bias is, we're going to sweep 29.5 and then go higher, is your bias we're going to actually go lower. Ultimately, guys, what you have to do is be patient. You have to create trade plans for yourself. We kind of mapped out a few of them just to give you guys some theoreticals. We shared some actual ones. But end of the day, you identify your levels, you set your alerts, and then when price comes into those levels, you trade them. I think that's the best non-financial advice I have going into the rest of the week is set your levels, be patient, and then just let the trade come to you, but do not hesitate to execute when it does. Trip, any last closing thoughts here?
No, I think you summarized it pretty well. We'll
Awesome.
continue to put in the liquidity
Liquidity stuff.
profiles and some of the alts that you guys actually asked about. I'll put them in the Telegram. So
Awesome.
all good.
Awesome, guys. Appreciate you guys tuning in, and we'll see you guys next week. Take care. Captain Cole
Take
signing
care.
out.